everybody, and welcome to this week's video. Today we're looking at trait 29, perseverance. What this particular trait brings is the energy to say yes to things. And conversely, it's also about saying no. Now, the place that the yes comes from is not from the mind, it's from the sacral or the energy resource, the gut response. And so ultimately it's a knowing outside of the mind in the moment whether or not you have the energy to commit to something or not. Now, part of the process here is about entering into something correctly, bringing all of your energy to that. And when we say yes to life, we are automatically saying yes to the difficulties that life can bring. And so we may experience difficulties after difficulties after difficulties, but inevitably at some point we get the rewards from that. And going through this process of facing the difficulties is where we really get to see this perseverance, this ability to say yes to something and persevere until we get to the end of that particular cycle. Life works in cycles, and so when we commit to something, when we say yes to something, we really need to move through that cycle until the end of the cycle, until it reaches its natural completion. Now, there can be this kind of pressure or this conditioned response to say yes to almost anything in life, and this is this constant saying yes to things, whether they are correct for you or not, ultimately leads to you becoming a super slave. So you end up feeling overworked, exhausted, like you've got too much on your plate, and ultimately this is going to lead to a breakdown. So either energetically, physically, emotionally, or in any other sense that you can think of in terms of breaking down. And also, the other thing that could happen is that you're constantly quitting. So you're saying yes to something, but then you're quitting that thing. So what I would really encourage you to do is to ensure that you are trusting your decision-making strategy and only entering into things that are correct and healthy for you. This will bring this amazing energy to persevere through any difficulties and to inevitably reach the rewards of bringing that committed energy to the person, to the thing that you committed to, and seeing where the cycle leads you to. Because of this is part of the abstract circuitry, this is about experience. And so entering into something that you've committed to with a set of expectations is ultimately going to lead to disappointment or frustration. What we need to do is to allow the decision-making strategy to say yes to something, and whether your mind knows why you've said yes or not, that is not the point. If energetically and from your decision-making strategy there is a yes, it's really about just entering into the experience and discovering what that cycle will lead to. And it's only when we get to the end of the cycle that we really know what we went through that cycle, what we went through that experience for. Then this discovery process and this commitment to things, this perseverance, this going through difficulties in a repeated way through many cycles of our life ultimately builds up this level of stamina. It teaches you so much about yourself and about your relationship to things and to people that you connect with along the way through these cycles. When we're thinking about this from a business perspective, now would be a really great time to check in to see, what have you committed to that is not correct for you? What clients or business partners or team members have you said yes to, and ultimately you've turned into a super slave? So you're doing all the work, you're doing everything that needs to be done, and it doesn't feel fulfilling, you don't feel satisfied, you're not feeling successful in that, you're just feeling really drained and overworked. These are clear indicators that you need to reassess that commitment, reassess that relationship, and see, is it time to say no? Because there is this real power that comes from saying no, just as much as there is from saying yes. in many respects, we've been conditioned from a societal perspective to feel obligated to say yes to things, or we feel under pressure to say yes, and there's also fear that drives us to say yes. And I'd really caution you here to really check in and reassess, what have you committed to? Is it correct? Is it bringing that sense of those rewards down the line, or are you just purely feeling frustrated in those relationships or the dynamics that you have said yes to? This week also brings a lot of energy to say yes to things, and so perhaps you want to reevaluate and see if there is anything that, you know, the timing is right now for you to say yes to them, because a lot about the saying yes has to do with timing. And you know, cycles come and go in life, and just because a cycle's moving past does not mean that you have to jump into it and say yes. When you trust your decision-making strategy and you continue to say no, that cycle will come back. It will appear at the right time, and when you commit to it at that time with your decision-making strategy, what you discover from that is going to be so much more satisfying than if you don't. So as you're moving through this week, really just do an assessment. Where have you said yes where you shouldn't have? Where are you still saying yes where you should be saying no? What is that power in the no? And maybe you can play with saying no where you would usually in the past have said yes. Where are you a super slave to someone else or to something else? And perhaps it's time to break those commitments and to really anchor back into what is healthy and correct for you. Start just really seeing that societal conditioning. Are you feeling pressured to say yes? Are you feeling as if you don't say yes now, it's never going to come back? So it's more of like a hasty decision as opposed to one from your true decision-making strategy. It's really a great energy, this perseverance, and it's an important part of our process in this human experiential way. And so I'd encourage you to really pay attention to when is the right timing to say yes, and that power of the no. And if you've got any stories or anything that comes up for you this week around the perseverance and the commitments and the yes or no, I'd love for you to share them with me. And don't forget that each week I release a new video sharing with you some information about the trait that is active at that time, so you can have a little more depth into understanding what is going on around us. If you would like to stay updated with that, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. If you've enjoyed this content or you feel that somebody else that you know could benefit from it, please feel free to share or to like the content. And until next week when I release the new video, thank you for tuning in, and bye for now.